Welcome to Motor Week. On the programme this week, Polos old and new from Volkswagen. We go budget with the Daihatsu Sirion, and we go ridiculously budget courtesy of Perodua. Old people, they go beige. Why is that? Get past, I don't know, 130 and suddenly beige is best. Beige hat, gloves, coat, woolly pulley, slacks, hair, teeth, all beige. It's a phenomenon I can't explain, but it does lead to cars like this. The Daihatsu Sirion, a simply gloriously bland piece of automotive crimpling from the same people who brought us the chunky 4-track and the funky YRV. It's a bit deceptive this, because the paintwork may be blue, but at heart, it's beige as beige can be. The entry-level version costs £7,495 and you can pay up to £9,940 for the top-of-the-range version. When we're browsing around down here at the bottom end of the market, we do expect to make the odd compromise. In the name of saving a couple of quid, we might sacrifice one of performance, space, build quality, image or style. Most of the competitors in this sector manage to shine at just one thing and then struggle at the rest. They're mini specialists. But here, Daihatsu seem to have compromised on everything. It doesn't stand out as being particularly good or bad at any one thing. It's beige. If you're interested in the figures, it comes with a choice of either a 1-litre 3-cylinder engine that manages to wheeze out a miserly 57 brake horsepower, frankly the thought of that makes my toes curl, or this 4-cylinder 1.3-litre unit that it shares with the Toyota Yaris. Gives a slightly more respectable 100 brake horsepower and 0 to 60 in 9.6 seconds. As for the riding and driving experience, well, the suspension seems to be based on, I'd say, possibly a shopping trolley, maybe a handcart, something like that. Rattly and rugged, to say the very least. And then there's the brakes. Oh yeah, somebody should have thought of that. Mind you, the steering's good. You can go left or right, which is nice. Maybe it does have a talent though, and that's coming with loads of kit, which it does in this 1.3-litre SL, which costs about £8,000. You get front and rear electric windows, air conditioning as standard, fog lamps, and a sporty steering wheel. But hold on, isn't kitting one of these things up to the gunnels a bit like stitching a set of skateboarding knee pads onto your OAP beige slacks? Okay, maybe that is just a bit unfair. Just because a car is small doesn't mean it can't offer a few goodies inside, and I guess they are appreciated. But, with or without loads and loads of accessories, it is a bit odd that a not particularly meaty car should be blessed with a name that could, at first glance, be mistaken for sirloin. Which is particularly ironic when you consider the fact that most of the potential punters for this car are more interested in a nice bit of brisket. And what are these outrageously pompous little bits of chrome doing? They're plastered all over the side, all over the grille, even on the door handles. And frankly, it would be excessive on a 50s American sedan. On a small city car, budget priced. How pretentious is that? Richard, the sirloin needs polishing. They could have given it a talent. They could have looked at the market and said, there isn't a small car that's especially good at, I don't know, carrying sheep, glowing in the dark, turning left, anything. Instead of which they've compromised on absolutely everything. Size, style, looks, practicality, and it's not even that cheap. In the same price range, you could have had a Skoda Fabia, Ford Fiesta, Peugeot 206 or Renault Clio. Interestingly, it's the Toyota Yaris with which it shares its 1.3-litre engine that really sticks the boot in and renders this thing completely and utterly redundant. Apart, I think, from one niche market. The military. The SAS should invest in a fleet of these, each with a little gun turret on the top. Face it, I could drive down the high street in this butt naked, apart from a tutu and a tam o' shanter, and nobody would notice me. So you can sure as heck get by in a battle with it. Invisible. Perfect camouflage. So, if camouflage is really your thing, if you're into fading into the background this much, yeah, it is there, then fine, go for it. Though how you'll ever manage to attract the attention of the salesperson in the showroom when you're trying to buy it, I don't know. Now, where is it? It's, oh, yeah, there is. Whew. Whew.
Size matters. We all want to be big, even if we're small. The big want to be bigger, the small just want everyone to think that they're big, but happily move around the place being small. The biggest, well, they just swagger with that self-belief that you only get in Americans, big or small. Now, if you thought just then I was talking about the size of men's penises,
you'd be absolutely right.
But this is Men and Motors, and we are, of course, talking about cars. Take this, the Volkswagen Polo, a small car, but trying to be bigger all of the time. Do you remember that theory that men's cars are a replacement for their... Well, it's absolutely true. When did you ever hear of a man saying, do you want to get in my Micra? It's really small. Yeah. This car is taller, it's wider, and it's longer than its predecessor. Yet, if you count the number of cylinders under the bonnet, it's smaller. But inside, it's cavernous. Confused? You will be. This is the 1.2 litre 3-cylinder SE. 3 cylinders, I hear you cry? Yes, that's right. It's to improve efficiency and get past the latest European emission tests, and lower the front weight of the car, and cheaper maintenance, apparently. Very little has changed on this car from its hugely successful predecessor. They've put Lupo lights on the front, why I'm not sure, it makes it look like a Lupo, and they've changed the rear light clusters. The main change, however, is the platform. They've used the brilliant chassis from the Skoda Fabia and plonked a Polo on top of it, and hoped that some of that car's dynamic handling attributes rub off on the Polo. Well, that's a nice idea in theory, but that's a bit like giving me Denise Lewis's leotard and hope that I can run, skip and jump like her. Oh, and throw. Now, all of the exterior styling is aimed at convincing you that this is a small, compact, nimble, sporty, nifty car. But inside, it's huge, voluminous, capacious, solid, and just a little bit dull. I am, of course, exaggerating slightly, but the space in this cabin is impressive. You could easily get 4 of me in here, which is more than can be said for several rooms in my house. The comfort is good, the seats are firm and practical. They are grey and dull, but I'd rather that than some wacky fabric designed to appeal to the ladies. Standard equipment on this, the SE, is very good. Electric windows and mirrors, remote central locking and air conditioning. Added extras on this car include a set of alloys, a multi-CD player and an electric sunroof, which irritates me because it does detract from the rear headroom, which otherwise is very, very good, as you can see. Oh, it looks well. Let's see if it drives well. This car handles, I think, very, very well indeed. It's lighter at the front because of that 3-cylinder all-new alloy engine. So it means that it won't understeer unless you're driving like an absolute hooligan. The brakes on this Polo are easily one of its best features. They're ABS as standard with electronic brake distribution, and it means that when you put your foot down on the brakes, it will brake progressively and safely without those alarm bells ringing. Yesterday with my girlfriend, I braked hard and normally she'd go, "Oh, Brendan, oh," but she didn't, she carried on. So, probably not great actually. Performance-wise, this car is not going to set your pulse racing. It'll go from 0 to 60 in about 14.5 seconds. It'll generate about 65 brake horsepower, and I'm afraid it runs out of puff somewhere around 97 miles per hour. But in its class, that's reasonable. And the handling in its class is very good. It's got that Volkswagen solid feel about the chassis. You really do feel like you're in a bigger car. So drive it up to its 6,000 limiter and you really do get lots of performance. Mid-range it's okay, although you do get the feeling that you could on a country lane pull out and overtake the truck in front of you. But if you're going to do that, plan ahead, because you might get into one of those embarrassing situations where you pull out and then have to brake as the truck accelerates up the hill and you just pull quietly in behind. You know what I'm talking about. As the girl in the commercial says, size does matter. And for super minis, that's all that matters. A small car that's nippy and efficient and yet feels like a bigger, solid car. A bit like a girl I once knew. Small on the outside, big on the inside. And by that I mean she had a big appetite.
After the break, Ian Royle samples a used Polo, assuming he can get the fluff off it first.
Some cars are not what you might call exciting, but they do a job and they do it very well. Take this car, the Volkswagen Polo. Its styling is rather dull and unimaginative. You wonder whether the designers of this car could spell the word flair. Obviously not. But it has thousands and thousands of loyal followers who'll buy one Polo after another. Why? It's superbly built, reliable, has rock-solid residuals, and this is a car that won't let you down. It's good whether you're popping round to the shops or going on a long motorway journey, but that's not to say that I'd buy one. Now, the world of the small hatchback is fiercely competitive, almost cutthroat. Manufacturers of small hatchbacks will do almost anything to go after your business. Rivals for the Polo, well, there are lots. You're looking at the Fiesta, the Corsa, the Saxo, the Clio, the Punto and the Civic. They all want you to buy their cars. But what sets the VW Polo apart from those rivals is that this holds its value better than any of those cars. Typically, after 3 years, a Polo will retain at least 50% of its original value. So when this was new, it was £9,500 or so. Now it still sells for more than £5,000. So residual values are very strong. So why does the Polo make rivals green with envy? Well, it's German, so it must be good, mustn't it? Well, in some ways, but for me the Polo doesn't have the style of, say, a Clio or a 206. Each update on the Polo tends to stick to the same winning formula. If it ain't broke, etc. The VW Polo, is this car just about the most ideal middle-class car that you can buy? I suspect it probably is. It says family image, it says second car or older driver. And although the Polo is not huge, they use their space fairly well. The boot is not too bad. And if you go for the 5-door model, then you get a reasonable amount of room for rear seat passengers too. But as you can see inside here, it is just so dull and drab. Masses of black everywhere, black plastic. It looks horrible. But what about specification on the Polos? Well, that can be a bit drab too, to be perfectly honest. Things like sunroof, air conditioning, electric windows, stereo were extras on cars of this age. You had to pay to have those on, although this car has got just about everything on it. But look for cars with a higher specification and with all the goodies on. The great thing about buying a Polo is that there are plenty about to choose from at all sorts of prices. And you needn't worry about buying a lot older car because it will still be good. Look through the local paper and you'll find, for instance, a tidy M-Reg 1-litre L with 60,000 miles for around £2,800. A 1.4 CL 3-door, 35,000 miles on a P-Reg for around £4,000. Move up to the 1.6-litre engine and a T-Reg saloon would cost around £7,000. Diesels are great news, firstly because they're so economical, and secondly, their strong value makes them a good buy. expect to pay at least £500 more for a diesel variant than a petrol. There are so many different models in the Polo range, you don't quite know where to start. But first of all, engines. Well, you've got the base 1 litre, which is underpowered, 1.3, there's the 1.4 like this, 1.6 petrol, and then the very good 1.9 turbo diesel. Lots of trim levels too, and special editions to look out for. So it can be a bit of hard work finding the right Polo for you, but you'll get there eventually. Now this car is a 1999 model, it's done 45,000 miles, but it's yours with lots of goodies on for just £5,200. There really is very little that goes wrong on the Polo as long as it's been well looked after. A proper service history with a main agent or specialist should ensure this, and running costs are low, with most cars only groups 3 to 6 insurance. Now, although you might think that the VW Polo is a dull choice, it's a safe choice all the same. This car might not set the world on fire with its driving ability, but it's a car that will run and run and run and won't let you down. That's this week's One Careful Owner, the VW Polo.
No, you see, that's how I used to feel before we became bestest friends. The Perodua Kelisa. It's made in Malaysia, and some people spend more on their car stereo. The Malaysians don't have a reputation for producing slinky, chic statements of urban city cool when it comes to cars. Theirs is more of a slap it together, put stickers on it and sell it cheap philosophy. But we shouldn't dismiss their cars out of hand. At £5,300 on the road, the Kelisa is about as cheap a car as you can get before you go pedal powered. Of course, this isn't the base model, it's the GXI. 5,900 quid. I've got to say that I didn't run into the street in my carpet slippers, desperate to slide a pyjama-clad buttock onto the driver's seat of this thing the morning it was unceremoniously deposited outside of my house with all the dignity of a miniskip. In fact, I ignored it. I walked, cycled, took the bus, hopped, anything to avoid that first moment when I knew I'd have to take the plunge. And now look at us, bestest chums. I like it, I really do. And here's why. First of all, the driving experience. It actually hits its top speed in 4th gear, with 5th effectively being a motorway overdrive. Perodua claim that top speed is about 88 miles an hour. Well, I'm not so sure, unless this speedo is wildly optimistic, because I've had the thing practically round the clock twice. I've been howling down the outside lane of the motorway. I like doing that in a car like this. It uses a 3-cylinder 1000cc engine, which in anything else would depress me mightily. In this though, it thrums away merrily. If it compares to anything, the Kelisa feels like a slightly more comfortable and considerably less bouncy version of the original Mini. The steering is direct and instant enough, the brakes are there, there's not a lot for them to do really, it's only a light car, but call on them and they'll do the job. But best of all, the engine noise. I couldn't quite make my mind up what it sounded like. Then a Porsche went the other way and boxed her. Honest, it does, to my ears. And then there's the looks. If it were made by pretty much anybody else, we'd all be cooing over its cute looks, standing 4 square on its wheels. Once again, we're reminded of the original Mini. It's a pretty car. Go on, admit it. And here's an idea for Perodua. Why not produce these in wacky paint schemes? Do a pink one with yellow flowers and white wheels. Do one to look like, I don't know, a pillar box. And pretty soon, it'll have cult status. Some great big junket-loving, freebie-grabbing magazine journalists have criticised the little Perodua for being a depreciation disaster. Eh? It costs £5 grand. I mean, how much can you lose? A Jaguar XJR would lose more than that in its first 2 seconds out of the showroom. I mean, I can see how it could be a difficult decision. For this kind of money, you could have had a really nice toaster, a fridge maybe, or a nice hat. Possibly the best of all reasons why the little Perodua and I have become chums is the fact that it puts you in a good mood. It's not a car you can frown in. Let me put it this way. Try wandering around for a day with a set of moose antlers taped to your head and being in a bad mood. Nobody's going to take you seriously. It's not a car for bad moods. You've got to smile, or people will laugh at you. Of course, you're not getting Audi build quality when it comes to the interior, but I have sat in far, far worse. And if you get bored in a jam, you can sit there and count how many different shades of grey plastic adorn the interior. In fact, it manages to ooze personality and character. There's a sort of inbuilt forgiveness factor. Put it this way, it would have to be pretty crap to offend anyone at this sort of money. In this GXI version, there is amazingly no shortage of kit. Electric front windows, twin airbags, alloy wheels, a CD player, remote release for the boot and fuel filler, even remote central locking. I think the real reason why we've become mates is this. Some small cars are just too pompous. They take themselves too seriously. Things like the Daihatsu and the Suzuki Ignis. They're all trying to be something other than a cheap and cheerful car. This clearly isn't. This, in fact, is about as cheap and as cheerful as you can get. Next week on Motor Week, we're staying small with Citroen's curvy new C3 and the hot new Mini Cooper. See you then.